And again, welcome. This is the NLP Today. Today we're going to talk about manifesting. And it made me think about a couple of things. One is, and it's a linguistic twist in your head, at least it is for me. You know, what's the difference between like trying to manifest something and trying to create a miracle? Right? Is there a difference? Because we got whatever we got, 12, 15 people on the so far, and all the people that'll watch us later, everyone's going to have a different view of what that is, right? Maybe it's this, maybe it's that. But the way I separate it, what works in my head is a miracle is one of those things that just kind of drops into your lap. You know, right place, right time. You weren't expecting something and boom, right? That's just the way that's my head. So I'll just share that with you. As opposed to when you're manifesting is something you're actively working towards consciously. So you're going toward a goal and you're trying to manifest it, whether it's more clients, a relationship, losing weight, things like that. So it's a subtle difference. And many times in the middle of trying to manifest something you're working towards, I think most of us have had that experience where it is like a miracle happened. You know, you're working toward it. So you meet the right person at the right time. You know, so it's kind of encased in it. Right. So as always, when I think of these things and I talk to other people, I had a nice talk with Victoria Gallagher about that. That's kind of her shtick is manifestation. And, you know, she manifests a lot, but she works her ass off to get those manifestations. You know, she said she was envisioning manifesting whatever it is, a couple 100,000 people on her mailing list, right? That's great, right? But then when you really start talking to her, she actually did all the goddamn steps that were necessary to do that kind of thing. You know, the advertising, studying, you know, how to put her funnels together, how to create her app, all this stuff that, you know, if you really got to know her, there was a lot of work behind the manifestation. Because I know one of the problems I can run into is, you know, I judge my insides by your outsides. You know, I see that you have a goal or you've worked towards something and you got it. And then I beat up on myself because why can't I do that? Right. And I don't know what you did to get that way. You know, it's the old joke of somebody that's in really great shape will get told by someone, well, it's just easy for you. I don't have time to work out. You know, maybe they're envisioning this person doesn't do anything all day. It's, you know, when that guy, and I know several people like that I work out with, we're at the gym between 6 and 7 in the morning and out of there by 8, you know, but other people like, oh, you don't, you know, it's just, we just assume sometimes, you know, the wrong thing. So when you think about it, I always think, and again, going back to what I try to do with the way I approach NLP, which is a little bit more structured, is look at the system that was going on in your head, the structure and the system, you know, that was going on in your head when you were working toward a goal and you actually manifest it. Right. As opposed to, and then you, excuse me, you do a contrast with a goal you're working toward that you've worked toward that you didn't manifest or you haven't manifested it. Right. So what's the difference? So you're working toward this goal, right. And sometimes it is the easy little things of doing the work to get there. Right. If you want to get in great shape and you want to look a certain way and you want to do that, well, you probably got to do certain physiological steps, right? You're going to eat, make better food choices, probably going to exercise, you're going to do some other things, right? And so many times, at least in my life, when I'm manifesting towards something, or I think I'm trying to manifest toward it, then when I look, because I did this when I was getting ready for this class, I looked, really, I haven't done a damn thing working toward that goal. I think about it every once in a while, but am I, am I doing the work, whatever it happens to be, and most of the time it's not. Right. So again, what are those little things you can shift that might help get you on the way to manifesting that miracle, right? Or manifesting whatever it is you want in your life. So, and again, I was thinking about that like, and I'll just say, I was trying to change how I worked out because I was trying to change how I look on camera for doing film and doing other things, right? And even on stage, right? And so it's like, well, I need to lose weight. I need to do this. I need to do several things, right? Change my workouts. And so I started to do that. And I did the research. I went and I looked online, found guys that were teaching different courses, and I found one that resonated with me. The great thing we have is, as I think it was Miss Michelle said the other day when we were talking about Thanksgiving, what are you grateful for? This magic box that most of us carry around that has almost all the information in the recorded history that you can access, right? It's there. You could find it if you look for it, right? And if you're fancy like Billy, you got your little flip phone, right? Your little thing. Isn't that interesting too? They're advertising that one phone. It's all new. Look, it flips. And those of us that had phones in the 90s going, wait a minute, I remember having one of those, right? With the little, but anyway, so I started looking around. I found a guy, I liked him. Jeff Cavalier is his name. He's a physical trainer. He's got like 7 million subscribers on YouTube, right? But his shtick, since I also teach marketing, I tell everybody, then I looked at his marketing. He's created a niche. He puts the science back in exercise, right? And he breaks the myths of what people think would work in an exercise routine, as opposed to this is what the science says. And he's got a master's in physiology and rehab because he worked for, I think, the New York Mets, and I think he was a consultant for the Jets. So he really knows his stuff. And what I liked about it, he'll describe something, an exercise, and then he'll show you like on a skeleton with the muscles attached, this is how it's working. And this is why you want to make sure you do this one little shift. And it's the shit I just find fascinating when I'm watching this. It's not just pick up the weights and do the weights and grunt and all this other stuff. So anyway, so I got a couple of his programs. But then, wait, there's more. When I got the program, I started doing it. And then the first thing I did was, I call it the paradox of knowledge. Because I've worked out my whole life. I'm pretty knowledgeable about it. I power lifted. I've competitive martial arts, boxed. So I know something about it. Not like he does, but still, I was doing what I call that paradox of knowledge, which is I knew enough that I started questioning everything this person was kind of saying, or how I'm going to do it a little bit different because I'm special, I'm on the special train, the little yellow bus, so to speak. That was politically incorrect. Don't counsel me for saying that. But so yeah, it's like, and so I was getting pretty good results, even though was I really doing the program he laid out? And all of us that do coaching or therapy or motivate, sessions with clients, how many of our clients do that to us, right? They come in, doc, I really want this more than anything in the world. I still remember why I hate working with smokers in my clinic. I want this more than anything in the world. I'll do anything. I don't want to keep smoking. Okay, great. And we do a little session. And back then you give them a record. Now you give them a recording. Back then it was either started with cassettes. This is how old I am. Started with cassette tapes, then went to CDs. And now it's just like, I'll send you the recording. And then they come in for a follow-up. Yeah, it didn't work too well. Well, did you listen to the recording? Like I said, I didn't have time. Well, last week you said this is the most important thing in your fucking life. And now 7 days later, you couldn't listen to it once. So anyway, but I was guilty of it, you know, or they pick and choose. And that's what I was doing with this recording. So again, I'm like, I was looking at this because, you know, I got to do a part in a few months where I'm supposed to be in really good shape. And I'm like, well, shit, you know, I need to make radical changes. And I'm like, well, why isn't the workout working? Right. And so I started looking online, and it was one of his posts. And it resonated with me because I use this analogy a lot, which is, I'll change it to my analogy. I forget what his was, but it's like, you know, if you come to my house and I bake you a cake and you love this cake, and I give you the recipe with not holding anything back, no grandma's secret bullshit. This is the recipe I used. Here it is. And you take the recipe and you go home and you start baking that cake, and you decide, I'm not going to put in eggs because I think that eggs are terrible for the human, whatever. You don't use the recipe. And then you come back to me and say the cake sucked. Well, no, you didn't follow the goddamn instructions, son. There's a reason why they train the military trains the way they train is to get you to do certain things, right? And they will point out when you're not doing it their way, right? And so I went back, and because my first response was, and I think all of us on this call have done this, I'll go find a different coach. You know, there's something wrong with the coach. And I started to, right? But I've been, like I said, I was working on this stuff for quite a while. And and then I went back and really looked, and I'm like, you know, and this is the hardest part, which is a searching and fearless moral inventory. You know, if you're into the 12-step world, they call it a searching and fearless, looking at yourself and going, what am I doing that's not making this work? Regardless of, you know, this guy's gotten phenomenal results. And I did get some results. I was doing pretty well. I mean, I did change, right? And then I had to look at that and go, you know, maybe, just maybe, I should just do this the way he fucking wrote it, how to do it for a while, right? And so I went back and I started, and I emailed him, which was nice, right? Because he actually has a nice support network, and they actually email back. And that's what they kind of said is, well, first of all, you know, and I like the way they said it, if you're telling the truth about that you've worked out your whole life, right? I love that little reframe in there because it puts it on me. Then why don't you challenge yourself to step up to the hardest level of this workout? They have 3 levels, like an entry, a medium, and the insane level or beast level. And I'm like, now, you know, it was speaking my language. So I'm like, yeah, I'll do that. I couldn't walk after the first week, right? And so anyway, but it was on me, you know, and then still I'm doing the things we're talking about, how to manifest things, visualizing, doing some things, right? But I was doing the work to get there, right? And then what I found when I do both, some of the like visualization techniques, I think Irene Hicks, Abraham talks about the 17-second rule, how to visualize things for 17 seconds, right? I add, you know, then someone else, supposedly the person she got that from, talks about adding a step, which we'll talk about in a minute. And when I did that and doing the work to get there, things started to happen. So I said, let's test this, right? I've been trying to, as many of you know, I've been trying to manifest a different business model while I've been doing some things. And so I started doing some of the homework, reaching out to different people. How do you do your business? You know, which sometimes is hard for me, right? Because I've been around this forever. It's hard for me to go to somebody, as they say, hat in hand, and go, you know, I like what you're doing. What the hell are you doing that's different than what I'm doing, right? And I approached several people in our world of the coaching, NLP, and hypnosis, and everybody was very pleasant, and we talked about some things, and I needed that. And so then, because I was doing the visualization and then taking the steps, because when I do the visualization, which we'll talk about in a moment, I put in doing some of the steps that I know I need to do. Right? Not just visualize I know they say visualize the end result, which is a great thing. But if it's something I'm working toward, I know what certain steps would be. If I want to look like Captain America, I got to go to the gym. I just can't sit around and meditate about looking like Captain America. Maybe my faith is weak in that, to that extent, right? And so yeah, that's been my experience, right? And then, some interesting things happened. Somebody reached out to me. I wasn't expecting to reach out, and we started a dialogue, and they're helping me do some things, change my website and things like that. So, and some of you got an email because I'm switching services, because all this other stuff that I needed to do for the last year, that I been meditating and trying to manifest this different business model, but I didn't want to make any changes, right? And so what do they say? If you always do what you always did, you'll always get what you always got, right? And I was comfortable enough that there wasn't that pressure on me, right? But because I did these things. So the way I was taught, and it kind of combines a little bit of what, Irene Hicks or Abraham, who talks about, excuse me, the 17-second rule, and then, but adding our NLP and our hypnosis thing, which is this, right? So let's say I'm trying to manifest a goal, right? First of all, if you're going to manifest your goal, it should be clear. What are you trying to manifest? What specifically? Because I know many times one of my problems is it's too general. Just had a guy, reached out to me, wanted me to work with him. And I said, sure. And we'll see if he reaches back out. Cause I said, well, I can tell you right now, your problem is it's too goddamn general. You got no specifics in what you're working toward, and it's too broad, right? You don't have a targeting system to hit this target, because you have 12 targets on the thing. So anyway, so what is your goal? And specifically, what is it, right? What steps do you know that you could take that maybe you're not taking, or you're not taking regularly or systematically or strategically, whatever word you want to use, right? Got someone on the call. It's like, like making the cold calls, right? Just picking up the phone and making the cold calls, right? And then, so what are some of those things that, like, I know what I need to do, and if I do them, I don't do them regularly. You're not going to, I harp on the working out, but you're not going to be in a certain shape if you go to the gym every 10 days, 12 days, things like that. You got to go. So what is it, right? And then when you look at those things that you're doing, are you setting too high a bar for what you're going to entry in? What's your entry level, right? I forget who it was. I stole the saying is how many times people judge their start by someone else's expert level, right? And if you've never acted a day in your life and you decide to do a show or a play or get in a movie, I would not recommend comparing yourself to Anthony Hopkins, right? It's like he has a different skill set. He's been doing this his whole life, right? And yet we do that. I see it, people at hypnosis convention all the time, where in fact, I was at a conference, the National Guild, standing there with Scott McFall, and someone comes up, and we were talking, and someone comes up, they go, I don't understand it. I want to do what you guys do. Why can't I do it? And my dear friend Scott McFall says, well, we've been doing this for damn near 40 fucking years, son. How long you been doing this? 6 months? There's a gap level here, And of course, he was brilliant. He flipped him into signing up for his mentorship program. But it was like, but we do that. When I started doing film after doing theater for, most of my adult life, it was like, I'm looking at these film actors going, well, how do they do what they do? And then, and what helped me, and then what my suggestion is, is if there's someone like that you like, if you could go back and find information of how they were when they started, right? How, because this one guy I worked with a few months ago, he was like, he wants to model Tony Robbins. I said, great. But I made him go find like all the videos he could find of Tony Robbins from the early 80s, you know, where he was real skinny, always wore a tie, he had bad acne. I mean, this, and he was polished, he was good, but he wasn't what we know Tony Robbins today, right? So I go, you know, you're picturing him now where he's basically, well, he is a billionaire. He's crossed the billion mark, right? Not from public speaking or NLP or hypnosis, ladies and gentlemen. He runs, I forget how many Fortune 500 companies. That's where his money is. But, you know, so don't judge. And if you can go back and figure out what they did, you know, what were those little steps they did? So when you're looking at your goal that you're working on, and what are some steps that you know you could take, whether it's sending out the emails, it depends what your goal is, getting in shape, work, you know, getting a exercise program that you can actually do, right? That works for you, whatever it is, right? And so, and then, you know, don't start at the beast level necessarily, right? Don't try to jump in. I'm going to make 300 cold calls a day. No, the hell you're not. You're probably not. You know, if you could probably knock off 50, 25, that's more than you're doing now, right? That's more than you're doing now. So at least it's a jump, and it's a jump, and then you'll get the feedback that may get you more excited to make more calls, right? And again, when I changed a little bit of my business model and I was visualized, did all the steps. I'll go over the steps in detail in one moment. And, you know, my first launching point was the hypnotic persuasion course, right? And it went over quite well, right? Because I looked at the number, I went, this is going really well, right? But then when the person that I'm talking to, one of the people I'm talking to, then I made the fatal error. I looked at one of their classes and how many people they were getting in. And I had to remind myself, well, they've been doing this model that I'm trying. They've been doing it for 4 years. So they have 4 years of history and track and what they're doing. I'm just starting off. So anyway, so what's your specific goal, right? What are some of the steps you could take to get there that you know you could take, you know, and then, you know, and make it simple. Don't make it too complicated, right? And then what you do is think about, you step into the feeling of how it feels when you're successful at accomplishing a goal. And I don't care what the goal is. You just think about a goal that you've done, right? And then step into that feeling, right? And so you have that feeling of success. And then you just sit there, and I take my little magic box and I set my little timer, still set, by the way, 20 seconds, right? And so, you know, and I got the little thing, and I'll close my eyes and I'll visualize first thing in the morning. I like to do it, going toward that goal, doing the steps, you know, and I throw in a few things that day that I know I'm going to do, right? I know I'm going to do. So as I visualize, I'm going to go, whatever it is, like send out some emails, do what I need to do, right? I also visualize in there, I know I'm going to feed the cat. I know I got to feed the bird, because Christina's doing something right now. She's off with the dog doing things the next couple of days. So I'm taking, and so I could put that in there because I know I'm going to do it. Right. So it's already built. This way I hallucinate this, ladies and gentlemen, or visualize it in my head, is those markers in my head. I know I'm going to hit. I'm going to go feed the dog, or not the dog, the cat. I know I'm going to feed and move the bird. These things I know I'm going to do. And then I can throw in that, oh, and then I'm going to sit there and I'm going to maybe send out an email. I'm going to do the things I need to do, you know, reach out, watch these videos I need to watch on how to do this stuff. Right. And then completing that task. And then when I hit the starter for my little thing, I visualize the whole thing that there, I can see myself, or I step into, okay, I'm feeding the cat, feeding the bird, moving that around, sitting on my computer, doing what I need to do, and getting some of those good feelings of success all the way through to the end. And so I do that for like 20 to 22 seconds is my little timer, right? And then I just repeat that process like 3 or 4 times, right? And I would suggest, and from what I've read and talking to a couple of people, is pick the goals you really want to accomplish and work on those right now. Don't do like the guy that I don't know if he's going to call me back. I'm like, you got too many goals you're working on at one time, son. You got to pick, you got to pick this one. You got to pick that one. You got to, yeah. You want to be a SEAL, you got to go through Navy boot camp first. Then you got to go through your regular, whatever your job in the Navy is going to be, right? Then you go to Hell Week. You got to make the then you go to this, right? It's not just the end game. So what's your goal? And just pick one. I would say, in my opinion, I try to keep it to 1 or 2. Right. And if I'm going to add a second, it should dovetail into the first. Right. It should help augment the first goal. Does that make sense to everybody? It would be it would help toward it and things like that. So, that's the process. Right. And then if you want to add a little bit of magic, yay, let's add a little bit of magic. What the magic you could think of, especially if it's a goal, like, and I was thinking of this for work, because this is my problem with work, right? These things I'm trying to change. I want to do them, right? I feel good when I do them. But to be honest with you, there's no passion to it. It's not like, I want this. I'm like I'm like a guy on prom night. I want this and I want it now. That's politically incorrect, but there's some passion there. There's some drive. This is what I want, right? And it's physical, right? And that only came to me because one of the guys I was talking to about building this, the way he does business, I heard it in his voice. He literally gets off on doing this stuff. Right. It's like you could it resonates with him, And I remember going back 20 something years ago, my friend, more like an associate, to be honest with you, wrote a book with him and knew him we worked together for 10 years, Mr. Kevin Hogan. But that was always the difference between him and me when it came to business. He loved it. He loved every aspect of it. And me, it was something I did to go do something else. Does that make sense to everybody? So he had the drive, the passion, the motivation to do some of those little things that I'd go, I don't want to do that. Right. And so I started thinking, how do I add that passion to my visualization that I'm trying to do? Right. Because I want to do it. It's fun. I enjoy it. It's kind of challenging, but I don't have that. So what I ask people to do, and this is where you have to get self-honest, what really gets your juices flowing? I don't care what it is, right? Getting laid, going out party. I don't care what really gets your juices flowing. That's the feeling you step in right before you do you do your visualization, your manifesting, right? And then you add the good feeling you get at the end when you've accomplished a goal, right? So the drive, that passion, my bird's yelling, that drive, that passion will get you to take the next step, right? And it came clear, and I'll go over the steps. It came clear when I was working on this a few weeks ago and started to make these changes. I was watching a talk by a highly articulate motivating individual that I highly recommend to everyone. Unless language bothers you. If language bothers you, you don't want to listen. But I was watching a talk by David Goggins, Chief Goggins, and he has a new book coming out. And boy, when he was talking about, and he got into that, like, you know, it took him 3 times to get through SEAL school or Hell Week. Took him 3 times to get through Hell Week. Broke his leg, all this bullshit that happened to him, right? But when he talked about the passion he had to do that, right? And when he kind of, I think if I'm misquoting him, but basically what he said is, you know, that last time going through there, I made the decision that the only fucking way I was leaving was when they pinned me or they carried me out in a fucking body bag. That was it. That was the only 2 choices. I wasn't going to quit. Nothing was going to happen. And I was going to do whatever I had to do. Right. And, you know, and it was, yeah, you know, it's a good story. He tore his knee up. A lot of us have been through some of those trainings. You never get out unscathed of those, right? You tear muscles, you break bones, but you complete the training, right? You don't stop. And so to take that mindset, but the passion toward it, right? Whatever that passion is. So what is it that really turns you on? What really gets your juices flowing? And I will back up and make one caveat. If you don't have something in your life that does that, you need to go find that first. Right? Because many people don't have passion, right? As the poet said, most men go to their graves with their songs still unsung. You know, that quiet desperation, right? So what really gets you going, right? For me, it could be like doing a show, being on set, you know, or being, you know, on the stage in a show. Not so much the rehearsals, but actually doing the performance. That gets, I just love that, right? Which that's probably why it's easy to put up with all the bullshit to get to that point, right? The rehearsals and the auditioning and all the other stuff. So what really gets your juices flowing? So then you got your goal, you know, some steps you need to take, right? You know, like, let's say if I want to work on my acting career, okay, I know what I need to do. And what's some steps I could take? Well, I need to get new headshots because I've lost weight and I look a little different than my old headshot. So I need to get headshots. I need to audition. I need to do some of these steps, right? And then the end result is the kind of role in, let's say, a film I want to be in. So I know some of the steps. And then as I gonna visualize it, I pick a day, you know, I pick a day and the day, and I know I'm going to be doing certain things that day. I know I'm going to stagger down the hall and get my hot cup of coffee. I know I'm going to feed the cat because she's giving me the evil eye sitting there. So I got to feed the cat, and then I got to go turn the lights on for where the bird is. These things I know I'm going to do. And then I can imagine somewhere during the day, maybe starting to reach out to figure out where I'm going to get my headshots, when I'm going to get my headshots, look for some auditions I can submit, do some things like that. I could add all those things. So then right before I do that, I think about whatever it is that gets my juices flowing. You know, so I want this and I want it bad. I mean, I could taste it. I want this bad. And I step into that feeling, then visualize the manifest I want all the way through to the end of the day. And yeah, so I've reached out. I've talked to a couple people, but maybe about headshots. I've looked at some auditions. I've talked to a couple people. I've looked at a couple videos online about acting or the business of acting. And I just let it go. And I repeat that for the 17 to 22 seconds with my little timer, like 3 times. All right. And that seems, and from talking to other people, a lot of the people that really teach this, Victoria Gallagher, Stephen G. Jones, a lot of their stuff, they have similar things in there, right? I mean, it's not, everybody does the same thing slightly differently. So that's my thing, is to add the passion, right? And, so what is it that gets you going? Right. And then add that, and then the feeling of completion where you had and you think about that, and then throw in some of those steps that you can do to get there. So, all right. So that is what I would call a different way to manifest and have some fun with it. Let me go back to gallery view. All right. I'm done talking.
Fabulous as always, dear sir.
It was good for me.
Fabulous.
Was it good for you?
Oh yeah. But I like to think of when you were saying the different steps to get there. Like you can't picture yourself starting at someone's beast mode. The benchmark that it takes, okay, I want to hit this benchmark, a smaller goal, benchmark. Because in first grade, when we taught children, we called those benchmarks, like the child has to reach this level to go to second grade, a benchmark, because they can't go to 12th grade with a first grade education.
No, they go to Congress. They go to
You don't know Florida schools. Come to Florida.
Yeah, benchmarks, right? Benchmarks. And then, like you say, if you're going to have if there's somebody you model, go and look them up, watch their videos, see what they say. It was refreshing to me to hear Hugh Jackman talk about, because he's going to do another Wolverine movie. And he said they were asking him, it must be like a slam dunk. You've done I think he still has the record for doing that superhero part the most. And he goes, every time I do this role, it scares me to death.
Oh, wow.
Right. And I'm like, that's refreshing, because it's like, because he goes, I want to do it good. I want to be better than I was before. Right. So it's like, wow. He's rather successful at what he does, most of us would say, right? He's still right now, he's still on Broadway doing Music Man for another 3 months, I think.
Yep.
And so anyway, to hear that, we assume how easy it is for these people, whatever they're happen to be doing, and you find out, maybe not, right? Cool.
And it's like you said with Hugh Jackman, he's been on Broadway. Broadway acting is different than movie acting, and that movie acting is different than Broadway acting. And
much different.
Much different. And it's the same even with us. We want a goal. We have to do something different. We have to do something different. It's not the way that I exercised in the 80s is not the same way I'm going to exercise in 2022 or 2023,
Yeah, back in the 80s, the toughest exercise was the walk of shame the next day. Wait, I'm the only one that experienced this shit? Wait a minute now.
No, you're not alone in that. That's for sure.
Oh, Caroline.
We've made many a walk of shame.
Yeah.
Where
are my pants? Sorry.
Oh my God.
It was a different time for the.
Well, and hopefully we're growing and evolving,
Change about.
So things have to change.
Yeah.
But do you think that they changed to the good? Like, I am young compared to you guys, but I feel like the world has shifted. Like, so many things has shifted positively, but I think that so many other things have shifted very negatively. And I don't know, I sometimes feel like I would have preferred to live in the 60s,
It's not that simple, though. I think that as you grow more mature, I will say, rather than using the word age, because age, I think, is a state of mind as much as physical years. But as you mature and you have the benefit of a retrospect, looking back, you look at things differently, and you see that what was so negative and hurtful was actually a really important lesson, and it gave you wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
And it helps you as you continue to go through life not to repeat mistakes, or you learn who to trust versus who not to trust, because people can inflict pain. They are hurtful. And it's an ongoing process. At my age, I'm still shocked to see that some people behave like they're in high school, like they never matured beyond that point. And I'm,
Well,
you know,
and I was
Toddlerhood, yeah.
yeah.
There was a bunch of us talking, and somebody was saying about the 60s, and it was a great
Yeah.
time, and and all this, and I'm like, you ever see them water cannon the blacks down in Alabama and sicking the dogs on them? They shot Martin Luther King and Malcolm X just because they were saying shit nobody wanted to hear. 55,000 young men were killed in Vietnam over bullshit, and they knew we were going to fucking lose from day one, right? So I'm like, they're like, whoa, you're kind of a negative Nelly. And I said, well, no, it's just that we look back with rose-colored glasses.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that
Because they don't
things
show
are
that shit on
cyclical.
TV. They'll show the
Yeah.
70s show, or the, it's like all peace and
Yeah.
love and all
Yeah.
this other stuff.
Yes,
Right.
Quite like that.
Yeah.
I
And
think things
but
are
don't
cyclical.
mess with the disco era.
No.
No, fame.
My best
wanna
years.
live forever. I wanna
But yeah,
live
so
forever.
so that's the manifesting. I'm going to turn off the recording.